Hello and welcome to the Deep Somna. I'm glad you found your way here. Maybe it's been a long day, or maybe you're just the kind of person who likes to end the evening with something slow, quiet, and curious. If you like drifting off to sleep while listening to science and hopefully learning a thing or two, you're in the right place. Just lie back, breathe easily, and let your mind settle into a slower rhythm. Tonight's journey stays close to the ground, to leaves, roots, sunlight, and soil. We're asking a question that sounds simple, even strange, but opens the door to something much deeper. We know plants grow. We know they react. But is that all? Is there something more? Is it possible that plants can think? Before we try to answer these questions, if these quiet explorations help you relax, fall asleep, or just bring a bit of calm to the end of your day, consider gently tapping the like button and subscribing. It helps others find their way here, too. One sleepy soul at a time. And if you feel like sharing, let me know where in the world you're listening from down in the comments, or what topics you'd be interested in learning about next. Now let's begin. Close your eyes now, if you haven't already. Let your body settle into the surface beneath you, feeling the weight of your limbs, the gentle pull of gravity holding you softly in place. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. The world outside this moment can wait. Your breath is slow, natural, unhurried. You might notice the rise and fall of your chest, the quiet rhythm that continues whether you think about it or not. Let that rhythm be your anchor as we begin to drift together into a different kind of awareness, a slower way of seeing. Tonight we're going to explore something that exists all around us, something so familiar that we rarely stop to consider its strangeness, its quiet complexity. We're going to think about plants, about the green world, about the intelligence that lives in stillness and unfolds in a time frame so different from our own that it seems almost to belong to another dimension entirely. But we're not here to learn facts or memorize details. We're here simply to let our minds wander through this landscape of ideas, to feel the texture of these thoughts as they pass through us like wind through leaves, gentle and unhurried. Breathe in slowly. Hold for just a moment. Let it go. The world is quieter than we think. Beneath the noise of human activity, beneath the conversations and the traffic and the endless stream of information, there exists a vast network of living intelligence that operates in silence, that thinks in chemicals and electrical whispers, that remembers across seasons and anticipates the future without anything we would recognize as a brain. Plants are not the passive backdrop to animal life. They are participants in something far more intricate, far more responsive than we ever imagined when we learned to call them simple or automatic or merely alive in the most basic sense. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the tension leaving your jaw, your forehead, the small muscles around your eyes. When you look at a plant, what you're seeing is only the smallest fraction of what's actually there. The visible body, the leaves and stems and flowers reaching toward light, these are the obvious parts. The parts that exist in our world of air and sunshine. But beneath the soil, invisible to casual observation, there exists another architecture entirely. A mirror world of roots that spread and branch and seek, that taste the earth and respond to what they find there. And even this is not the whole picture. Because plants don't end at the boundary of their own cells. They extend into the world around them, into the soil and the air, into the bodies of fungi and bacteria, into the chemical atmosphere that surrounds every leaf and root, creating a presence that is diffuse, distributed, impossible to draw a simple line around. Your breathing is steady now, slow and even. You might feel a pleasant heaviness in your limbs. We talk about intelligence as if it requires a central command center, a brain that processes and decides, a single point where consciousness lives and choices get made. But this is only one way that intelligence can be organized. It's the way that worked for animals, for creatures that need to move quickly, to chase or flee, to make split-second decisions about a world that changes rapidly around them. Plants solved the problem of being alive in a completely different way. They distributed their awareness across their entire structure. Every root tip is a kind of sensor, gathering information about moisture and minerals, about the chemical signatures of neighbors, about the texture and temperature of the soil. Every leaf measures light, tracks the sun, monitors its own water status, responds to touch and wind, and the particular wavelengths that indicate whether other plants are shading it from above. Let yourself sink deeper into rest. There's no hurry. We have all the time we need. This distributed sensing creates something remarkable, something that challenges our basic categories. A plant doesn't have a brain, but it has something like a nervous system, electrical signals that travel through its tissues, carrying information from one part to another. When an insect begins to eat a leaf at the top of a plant, electrical signals race downward and outward, warning other leaves, triggering the production of defensive chemicals that make the plant less appetizing, less digestible. The plant as a whole responds to local damage. It integrates information. It makes decisions, though not in any way that looks like human decision-making. There's no moment of conscious choice, no deliberation, no weighing of options. Instead, there's something more like a settling, a chemical consensus that emerges from thousands of small responses happening simultaneously throughout the plant's body. Feel the darkness behind your eyelids. Notice how it seems to have depth, texture, like looking into deep water. Scientists have measured these electrical signals, watched them propagate through plant tissues at speeds that are slow compared to animal nerves, but still surprisingly fast, measurable in seconds or minutes rather than hours. They've discovered that different kinds of stimuli produce different patterns of electrical activity, different signatures that carry meaning. A plant somehow distinguishes between the touch of wind and the touch of an insect, between the shade of a cloud and the shade of a neighboring plant. It responds differently to each situation, suggesting that somewhere in the distributed processing of its tissue, these signals are being interpreted, given meaning, translated into action. Your body knows how to rest. You don't have to try, just allow it. The question of whether this constitutes real intelligence or just automated response becomes less interesting the more you think about it, because what is intelligence, really, except the ability to sense the world, to process information, to respond in ways that increase the chances of survival? Plants do all of this. They do it slowly, in a time frame that makes their responses invisible to our quick animal eyes, but they do it with sophistication that rivals many of the systems we build with intention and design. A single plant is processing vast amounts of environmental data every moment, adjusting its growth, its chemistry, its allocation of resources, all based on the shifting conditions it senses around itself and within itself. Let your mind drift now. Don't hold on to any single thought. Just let the words wash over you like water. But plants are not alone. This is crucial. The intelligence of the green world is not just individual, not just the private calculations of separate organisms. Plants are connected to each other and to thousands of other species in ways that create networks of information and resource, sharing that span entire forests, entire ecosystems. The most famous of these connections runs through the fungi that weave through soil, the mycorrhizal networks that link root to root, tree to tree, creating what some researchers have called the wood wide web, a living internet of the forest floor. Your breathing is so quiet now, barely perceptible. This is good. This is exactly right. These fungal networks are ancient partnerships, relationships that go back hundreds of millions of years, back to the moment when plants first emerged from water onto land and found the earth harsh and difficult, lacking in the nutrients and water that life requires. Fungi offered a solution. They extended the reach of plant roots, trading their ability to explore soil, to break down rock and organic matter, to transport water and minerals across vast distances, in exchange for the sugars that only plants can make through photosynthesis. It was a deal that transformed the planet, that made the green colonization of land possible, that created the foundation for all terrestrial life that followed. Let yourself float in this story. There's no test, no need to remember details. Just feel the shape of it. But these networks do more than just transport nutrients. They carry information. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical signals through the fungal network to neighboring trees, warning them, allowing them to prepare their defenses before the insects arrive. Mother trees, the large old trees at the heart of a forest, have been shown to recognize their own offspring through these networks, to preferentially send resources to their young, to support saplings growing in deep shade where photosynthesis is difficult. The forest begins to look less like a collection of individual competitors and more like a community, a society, where information flows and resources are redistributed according to patterns that benefit the group as well as the individual. Your thoughts are slowing down. This is natural. This is sleep beginning to arrive. Scientists studying these networks have found they're not simple, not just direct connections between two trees. They're complex webs with hubs and nodes, with trees that are more connected than others, with pathways that can route around damage, with redundancy and resilience built into the structure. The parallels to neural networks, to the architecture of brains, are striking enough that researchers use similar mathematical tools to analyze both systems. And while no one is suggesting that a forest thinks in any way comparable to a human mind, there is something happening in these networks, some kind of collective processing, some emergence of forest-level behavior that can't be reduced to the simple actions of individual trees. Feel yourself sinking, like settling into deep water, pressure all around you, holding you, supporting you. Communication in the plant world doesn't stop with fungal networks. Plants speak in chemicals, releasing compounds into the air that carry messages to their neighbors. When a willow tree is browsed by deer, it releases chemicals that drift downwind to other willows, triggering them to increase their production of bitter compounds that make their leaves less palatable. The chemical vocabulary is surprisingly sophisticated. Plants can signal that they're under attack, can specify what kind of attacker it is. Insect or mammal can even indicate how severe the damage is. Neighboring plants receive these signals and respond appropriately, ramping up their defenses, sometimes even releasing chemicals that attract the natural predators of whatever is attacking their neighbor. Let yourself dissolve into the darkness. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing you need to carry with you into sleep. Even stranger, plants can communicate across species boundaries. A tomato plant being eaten by caterpillars releases chemicals that attract wasps that parasitize those specific caterpillars. The plant is essentially calling for backup, recruiting its enemies' enemies, using scent as a kind of telephone to predators. And the wasps have evolved to recognize these calls, to distinguish the chemical signature of a plant under attack from the background noise of plant volatiles that always fills the air. The relationship is so specific that wasps can tell the difference between a plant being eaten by caterpillars and a plant that has just been mechanically damaged. They respond only to the real threat, showing that the plant's signal carries detailed information about what's happening, not just a generic alarm. Your body is heavy now, so heavy. It would take effort to move, and there's no reason to move. Rest is all that matters. Plants also communicate through electrical signals in the soil, creating fields that other plants can detect. Roots generate electrical activity as they grow, as they transport nutrients, as they respond to their environment. These fields extend beyond the root itself, creating a zone of influence that other roots can sense and respond to. Some plants seem to recognize their own electrical signature and grow their roots differently when they detect it, avoiding competing with themselves. Others respond to the electrical activity of neighboring plants, adjusting their growth patterns to minimize competition or maximize cooperation depending on the species and the situation. Time moves differently in the green world. This is something hard for us to grasp, locked as we are into our rapid animal perception, our quick nervous systems that operate on the scale of milliseconds and seconds. For plants, meaningful events unfold over minutes, hours, days, seasons, years. A tree's response to drought might take weeks to fully manifest. Its adjustment to changing light conditions as neighboring trees grow or fall might span decades. To really see what a plant is doing, to understand the logic of its behavior, you have to speed up time in your mind, compress weeks into seconds, years into minutes. Only then does the dance become visible, the slow reaching and retreating, the careful placement of leaves to capture light while avoiding shade, the gradual exploration of soil by roots seeking water and nutrients. Sleep is very close now. You can feel it at the edges of your awareness, soft and inviting. But within this slowness, plants have a sense of time that is exquisitely precise. They track the day-night cycle with internal clocks, circadian rhythms that persist even when plants are kept in constant conditions, constant light or constant darkness. These clocks regulate thousands of genes, turning them on and off in daily patterns that prepare the plant for dawn before dawn arrives, for dusk before the light fades. A plant knows what time it is, not consciously, not in any way that feels like human knowing, but in a deep cellular sense, in patterns of protein production and gene activation that cycle with regularity that rivals the most precise timepieces we've built. These circadian rhythms allow plants to anticipate, to prepare for predictable changes in their environment. Photosynthetic enzymes begin to increase before dawn, ready to capture the first light. Flowers open at specific times of day when their pollinators are most active. Some plants even seem to track longer cycles, preparing for seasonal changes weeks in advance, responding not just to current conditions, but to the pattern of change, the rate at which days are growing longer or shorter, integrating information over time to predict the future. Let the words become background now, just sounds, just rhythm. Meaning doesn't matter anymore. Memory in plants is something researchers are only beginning to understand. It's not memory as we know it, not the recall of specific events, not narrative or episodic, but it is something. Plants remember the direction of light and continue to grow toward it even after the light is removed. They remember touch, becoming less sensitive to repeated mechanical stimulation, a form of habituation that looks remarkably like learning. Venus flytraps count, remembering the first touch on their trigger hairs and closing only when a second touch comes within about 20 seconds, a way of avoiding false alarms, of ensuring that the prey is real before spending the energy to close. Some plants remember cold, requiring a period of winter chill before they'll flower in spring. This vernalization, this cold memory, can last for months, stored somehow in the plant's tissues, in chemical modifications to its DNA that persist through cell divisions, carrying information from one generation of cells to the next. The plant that flowers in April remembers January, remembers the long, slow freeze, and uses that memory to time its reproduction appropriately, to avoid flowering too early when frost might still kill the delicate flowers. You're drifting now, untethered, floating in the space between waking and sleeping. Even more remarkable, some plants seem to pass memories to their offspring. Seeds produced by plants that experienced drought grow into seedlings that are more drought tolerant, even if those seedlings never experience water stress themselves. The parent plant somehow writes its experience into the seed, packages information about the environment it grew in, giving its offspring a head start, a preparation for the world they're likely to face. This is not genetic change in the traditional sense, not mutation and selection, but epigenetic modification, chemical tags on DNA that affect which genes are active, tags that can be passed from parent to offspring, carrying information about recent history into the next generation. The boundary between plant and environment becomes fuzzy when you look closely. A tree is not just wood and leaves, it's also the air within its leaves, the water traveling up from roots to canopy, the gases diffusing in and out, the chemicals evaporating from leaf surfaces, the fungi in its roots, the bacteria on every surface, internal and external. Where exactly does the tree end and the world begin? The question has no simple answer. The tree is a process, a flow, a temporary stabilization of matter and energy, drawing materials in, rearranging them, breathing them out, sustained by continuous exchange with everything around it. Sleep is here. You're at the threshold. Let yourself cross over. There's nothing to fear, nothing to lose. There's something almost alien about this way of being, this form of life so different from our own. We're used to thinking of life in animal terms, in terms of mobility and centralized control, of quick reactions and clear boundaries between self and other. But plant life suggests other possibilities, other ways that awareness and response, and even something like thought can be organized. Not better or worse, just different, optimized for a different set of challenges, for survival in place rather than survival through movement. Let go of these words. Let them become like rain on water, disappearing as they arrive. The evolutionary history of plants is almost incomprehensibly long. The first plants appeared in the oceans more than 1 billion years ago. Simple single-celled organisms that learned to capture sunlight and convert it to chemical energy through photosynthesis. This invention, this trick of using light to rearrange matter, is perhaps the most important innovation in the history of life on Earth. It created the foundation for almost all other life, pumped oxygen into the atmosphere, transformed the planet from a world of brown and orange into a world of green and blue. Every breath you take is possible because of plants, because of the oxygen they release as a byproduct of photosynthesis, accumulating over billions of years, creating an atmosphere that animals could eventually evolve to breathe. The move from water to land came much later, only about 470 million years ago, recent in evolutionary terms. The first land plants were tiny, simple, creeping across wet rocks, staying close to water, venturing only barely into the harsh environment of air and soil. But they had their fungal partners, the mycorrhizae that helped them extract nutrients from rock, that allowed them to survive in a substrate that had almost none of the dissolved minerals that aquatic plants could simply absorb from the water around them. This partnership was so successful that it spread, diversified, became the foundation for forests and grasslands, and all the terrestrial plant life that followed. Your mind is quiet now, almost silent. This is what you've been waiting for all day. This peace, grasses appeared and transformed landscapes, creating vast prairies and savannas, supporting huge herds of grazing animals, creating the conditions for the evolution of human ancestors who walked upright through tall grass and eventually learned to cultivate those same grasses, to plant wheat and rice and maize, to build civilizations on the surplus energy that could be stored in seeds, in the concentrated packages of carbohydrate and protein that grasses produce in abundance. You're almost gone now, almost sleeping. Just a little further. Just let go. The relationship between humans and plants is so fundamental that it's almost invisible. We are plant-dependent in ways that shape everything about us, from our bodies to our societies to our gods. Agriculture, the deliberate cultivation of plants, is only about 10,000 years old, but it changed everything. It allowed populations to grow, to settle in one place, to accumulate resources and knowledge and artifacts. Cities became possible. Writing became necessary to track harvests and taxes and distributions. Social hierarchies emerged, specialists who didn't grow their own food, priests and kings and craftspeople and soldiers, all supported by the surplus energy captured by crops. But this relationship was not just humans domesticating plants. Plants were domesticating us as well, evolving to need human intervention to spread their seeds, to clear competing vegetation, to water and fertilize and protect them from herbivores. Corn can no longer reproduce without human help, its seeds trapped in the tight husk of the ear, unable to scatter on their own. Wheat became more productive, but also more fragile, dependent on regular watering and fertile soil. The relationship became mutual, each species changing the other, creating a partnership that has defined the last 10 millennia of life on Earth. Sleep is all around you now, inside you, waiting for you to surrender to it completely. In our houses and our cities, we surround ourselves with plants, even when they serve no practical purpose. We keep houseplants in artificial environments, in pots and planters, on windowsills and balconies, creating tiny ecosystems in our living spaces. We plant gardens, spend hours tending them, watching them grow, finding satisfaction in the simple fact of greenness, of life sustained by our care. There's something deep in us that responds to plants, that feels calmer and more content when we're around them, when we can see green growing things, even if they're just images, photographs of forests and fields. Studies have shown that hospital patients recover faster when they have views of trees from their windows. Office workers report less stress when there are plants in their workspace. The presence of vegetation lowers blood pressure, reduces anxiety, improves mood and concentration. We need plants in ways that go beyond oxygen and food. We need them aesthetically, psychologically, spiritually. They ground us, remind us of slower rhythms, of cycles of growth and rest, of life that continues regardless of human drama and urgency. Your breath is so slow, so soft, you might not even feel it anymore. This is perfect. This is exactly right. The philosophical questions that plants raise are profound. What is the nature of intelligence if it doesn't require a brain? What is consciousness if it can be distributed across a decentralized system? What is the self if it has no clear boundaries, if it shades gradually into the world around it? Plants challenge our categories, our assumptions about how life can be organized, how awareness can manifest. They suggest that intelligence is not a single thing, but a spectrum, a continuum of responsiveness and integration and adaptation that takes many forms, some centralized and quick, some distributed and slow, but all solving the fundamental problem of how to survive in a changing world, how to sense and respond, and remember and anticipate. There's an old question in philosophy about whether a tree falling in the forest makes a sound if no one is there to hear it. The question is supposed to be about the nature of perception, about whether reality depends on an observer. But maybe the real answer is that the forest itself is full of observers, that the trees around the falling tree sense the vibrations, the crash, the sudden opening in the canopy, the change in light patterns, the new opportunities for growth. The forest knows the tree has fallen, responds to it, adjusts, begins the long process of filling in the gap, growing into the space, decomposing the fallen trunk back into soil, recycling its matter and energy. The absence of human observers is irrelevant. The forest observes itself, senses itself, responds to its own changes. Let everything fall away now. Thoughts, words, awareness of your body, awareness of the room around you. Fall into the deep place where none of this matters. Time in the green world operates at scales that dwarf human experience. The bristlecone pines in California have been alive for more than 5,000 years, growing since before the pyramids were built, since before writing, since before cities, persisting through empires and wars, and the entire arc of recorded human history. What is a human lifetime to such a tree? A brief moment, a quick pulse, barely noticed, the tree continues, adding rings year after year, century after century, surviving through slow patience, through the ability to pause growth during bad years and resume when conditions improve, through sheer stubbornness and the lack of any natural lifespan, any programmed senescence. These trees don't die of old age. They die when conditions finally become impossible. when drought or fire or beetles overwhelm their defenses. But not because some internal clock runs down. They are potentially immortal, limited only by the environment, by external circumstances. Even ordinary plants have relationships to time that are strange from our perspective. Seeds can wait decades or even centuries for the right conditions to germinate. Buried in soil, they sense moisture and temperature and light quality, making decisions about when to risk the vulnerable transition from dormancy to active growth. Some seeds require fire to germinate, waiting for the heat and smoke of a wildfire to crack their hard coats, to signal that the canopy above has opened, that light will be available, that this is the moment to grow. They can wait for a century or more for that fire, patient beyond measure, content to exist in suspended animation until the future they're designed for finally arrives. Darkness is everything now. You're floating in it, held by it, safe in it. There's something humbling about plant time, about the patience it requires, the acceptance of conditions, the lack of urgency. We rush constantly, driven by schedules and deadlines, and the quick metabolism of warm blood and active minds. But plants remind us that there are other rhythms, slower pulses, patterns that unfold across seasons and years and decades. A forest grows imperceptibly day by day, but dramatically decade by decade. A seed waits, seemingly doing nothing, but in fact maintaining itself in readiness, staying alive without growing, existing in potential until the moment of actualization arrives. The green world is quiet, but it is not simple. It is complex in ways that rival and perhaps exceed animal complexity, just organized differently, distributed rather than centralized, slow rather than fast, patient rather than reactive. To understand it requires a shift in perspective, a slowing down, an acceptance that intelligence and awareness, and even something like intention can exist without anything resembling human consciousness, without words or thoughts or that inner voice that narrates our experience. Plants have none of these things, but they still know their world, still respond to it with sophistication and subtlety, still make what look very much like choices about where to grow, how to allocate resources, when to reproduce, how to defend themselves. Let yourself dissolve completely. There's no you anymore, just breath and darkness, and the faint echo of words fading into silence. Perhaps what we call consciousness is just one manifestation of a more fundamental property of life, the ability to sense and integrate information and respond in ways that promote survival. Perhaps awareness exists in degrees, in forms, in ways that don't require centralization or quickness, or the particular substrate of neural tissue. Perhaps the line between living and merely mechanical is not where we thought it was, not drawn at the boundary of nervous systems and brains, but somewhere deeper, somewhere that includes the root tips sensing soil chemistry, the leaves tracking sunlight, the whole organism adjusting itself moment by moment to the world it finds itself in. The night is deep around you. The world has faded. There's only rest now, only the slow drift into sleep. Plants are older than us, more patient, more distributed, more cooperative, more deeply integrated with the planet. They built the atmosphere we breathe, the soil we stand on, the food chains that sustain all animal life. They are the foundation, the base layer, the green machinery that captures energy from sunlight and makes it available to everything else. And they do this while demonstrating a form of intelligence that challenges everything we thought we knew about minds and consciousness and awareness. The forest breathes in sunlight, and breathes out oxygen. The roots drink from aquifers and lift water to clouds. The leaves fall and become soil. The soil becomes new leaves. Everything cycles, everything connects, everything participates in vast exchanges that blur the boundaries between individual and community, between organism and ecosystem, between life and world. You're sleeping now, or nearly sleeping. These words are just sounds, just rhythm, just the gentle push into dream. In the morning, you'll wake to a world full of plants, familiar and overlooked, everywhere and invisible. You'll see trees and grass and flowers, but you'll know now that what you're seeing is only the surface, only the visible fraction of something far more complex, far more aware, far stranger, and more wonderful than it appears. You'll know that the green world is thinking in its way, sensing and responding and remembering and preparing for futures that haven't arrived yet. You'll know that intelligence is not what you thought it was, that minds are not the only form of awareness, that consciousness might be everywhere, distributed through roots and leaves, flowing through fungal networks, suspended in chemical whispers between plants. The world is full of quiet intelligence, slow thought, green wisdom. Everything is soft now. Everything is distant. The trees are breathing while you sleep. The roots are sensing while you dream. The forest knows you're here, knows in its way, in the language of chemistry and time, in patterns too slow for you to see, but real nonetheless, present nonetheless, aware in its distributed way that you exist, that you breathe, that you're part of the cycle too. Another organism in the vast interconnected web of life that covers the planet, that transforms rock and air and water and sunlight into the green abundance that surrounds you. Sleep now. Let the green world hold you. Let the slow time of plants enfold you. Let the quiet intelligence of roots and leaves and mycorrhizal networks carry you down into rest, into the place where you don't need to think or know or understand, where you can simply exist, simply breathe, simply be part of the cycle, the great turning of life that continues whether you're aware of it or not. The plants are growing while you sleep. The night is deep and soft. Everything is quiet. Everything is slow. Everything is green and dark and peaceful. You're sleeping now, held by the earth, surrounded by the quiet intelligence of the living world, part of something vast and patient and endlessly interconnected. Sleep, rest, dream of forests and roots and the slow, patient knowing of plants. Dream of time measured in seasons and decades. Dream of intelligence that has no center, no single voice, no hurry. Dream of the green world, the quiet world, the world that thinks in chemistry and light, that remembers in modified DNA, that speaks in scents and electrical whispers, that cooperates through underground networks spanning forests, that has existed for billions of years and will exist long after we're gone. The plants know how to wait. They know how to persist. They know how to grow toward light even in darkness. And you know how to sleep. You're doing it now, sinking deeper, further into rest, into the dark, quiet place where nothing needs to happen, where time stops meaning anything, where you're safe and held and allowed to simply dissolve into unconsciousness. The green world continues around you, in you, through you. Oxygen molecules that were sunlight in a leaf this afternoon. Carbon atoms that were carbon dioxide in your breath this morning. Water that was rain, was river, was ocean, was cloud, was root, was leaf, was atmosphere. Everything cycles. Everything connects. Everything participates in exchanges too complex to track, too vast to comprehend, too beautiful to require comprehension. You don't need to understand. You only need to rest, to let go, to trust that the world will continue without your attention, that the plants will keep growing, the roots will keep sensing, the networks will keep communicating, the forest will keep breathing. You can sleep now, deeply, completely, without reservation or worry. The night is long and soft. The darkness is gentle. The silence is full of the quiet work of plants, the slow intelligence, the green knowing that operates beneath the threshold of human perception, beneath the speed of human thought, in time frames that span seasons and years and centuries. You're part of this. You always have been. You always will be. And for now, all that's required is sleep. Rest. The deep rest that restores you. The quiet that surrounds you. Let everything go. Let yourself drift. Let the green world carry you into sleep, into the place where you don't exist as a separate thing, where you're just process and flow and part of the great cycle. The darkness wraps around you like soil around seeds, protective and complete, asking nothing, offering everything. The simple gift of stillness, of time suspended, of consciousness dissolving into the background hum of existence, where thought becomes unnecessary, where awareness fades to the dimmest flicker, and even that flicker is welcome to go out, to surrender completely to the pull of sleep that has been gathering around you like mist in a forest, condensing, becoming heavier, becoming irresistible. There are forests growing in darkness right now, in the hours before dawn, when photosynthesis has stopped, when the great machinery of carbon capture pauses, waiting for light. But the forests are not truly still. They're respiring, burning stored sugars, releasing carbon dioxide like sleeping animals, maintaining themselves through the dark hours, keeping cells alive, keeping processes running at minimum levels, existing in a kind of rest that is not quite sleep, but something analogous to it, a low-power mode, a conservation of energy, a patience that knows dawn will come eventually, that the dark is temporary, cyclical, part of the rhythm that has repeated billions of times since life began. Your own breath is part of this exchange, this giving and taking between animal and plant, between oxygen and carbon dioxide, between the quick metabolism of warm blood and the slow, patient chemistry of chloroplasts. Every breath you take connects you to photosynthesis, happening somewhere on the planet, in some forest or field or patch of ocean phytoplankton. Green cells splitting water molecules and releasing oxygen. Oxygen that drifts through the atmosphere, mixes, eventually finds its way to your lungs, into your blood, into your cells where it accepts electrons in the final step of cellular respiration, allowing your brain to fire, your heart to beat, your body to maintain the temperature and chemistry and electrical gradients that constitute being alive. And when you exhale, you send carbon dioxide back out into the world. Carbon that was recently part of your food. Carbon that will eventually be captured by a plant somewhere, pulled from the air, incorporated into sugars and starches and cellulose, becoming leaf or root or seed, solid matter conjured from invisible gas, the magic trick at the heart of photosynthesis, the fundamental transformation that makes the living world possible, the structural investment of others instead of building their own trunks. Epiphytes perched on branches high above the ground, living in pockets of accumulated organic matter, making entire miniature worlds in the crooks of limbs and the forks of branches. For a human, it is almost impossible to perceive these dynamics directly because they are so slow. A forest seems static when viewed on the timescale of days. Trees stand in the same place. The canopy does not obviously move. Trunks do not visibly grow thicker. But if you could see in time lapse over years, you would witness constant rearrangement, growth and decay, colonization and retreat, light patches opening and closing as branches fall, seedlings rising, old trunks hollowing, fungi erupting and dissolving. Sleep functions like a kind of time lapse for your own experience. You live days one by one, but in sleep the brain compresses, rearranges, revisits. Events that were hours apart in waking life can be woven together in a single dream. Feelings that were diffuse can be pulled into focus. Memories can be clustered and labeled, filed into the libraries of the cortex. What seems slow and confusing during the day can sometimes reorganize in a single night into something understandable, or at least less sharp. Let this night be part of that slow rearrangement. You don't need to steer. You don't need to narrate. You only need to give your system time. Imagine now a tree standing on a mountainside. Its roots clutch the slope, penetrating cracks in rock, holding soil in place, preventing erosion. Its trunk is a column that began as a flexible twig and thickened year after year, ring after ring, documenting seasons as lines in wood, narrower in dry years, wider in wet years, each ring a record you could read. If you knew the code, its branches spread like arteries, each one dividing into smaller and smaller branches until they end in a cloud of leaves. Each leaf a solar panel, each panel a pump that pulls water upward through xylem water that evaporates from the leaf surface and tugs more water up behind it from the roots. There is no mechanical pump in the tree. There is no engine, no heart. There is only the physics of water and the structure of tissues evolved to exploit those physics. Yet the result is astonishing. Water traveling tens of meters against gravity, forming a continuous column from roots in the soil to leaves in the canopy, moving unceasingly as long as light and humidity and temperature align. You, too, are an emergent system built from countless processes that run on their own. You are not the one beating your heart. You are not the one timing each breath. You are not the one directing blood to your gut after a meal, or to your muscles when you climb stairs. These things happen beneath the surface of awareness. Just as sap rises without a central command, sleep is when you step even further back, retreating from the illusion of being in charge, allowing the body to show you that it never really needed your conscious control to function. You can feel the relief of that if you allow it. The sense that you can finally put everything down. Far from forests, in cities built of concrete and glass, plants persist anyway. They grow in sidewalk cracks, in abandoned lots, in planters on balconies 10 stories above the ground. Mosses colonize damp walls. Tiny ferns grow in the seams of old bricks. Vines climb wire fences and streetlights. We call them weeds, as if their presence were an insult, an intrusion into human order, but they are simply doing what life does. Exploring, testing, filling gaps, converting light into matter wherever they can. If you look closely at a patch of moss on a stone wall, you can see an entire miniature forest, stems rising only millimeters, but branched and leafed and photosynthesizing, forming a soft green surface that holds water, shelters microorganisms, modifies the humidity and temperature of the tiny world just above the stone. Raindrops become lakes at that scale. A single fallen leaf from a street tree can cover a whole moss landscape like a brown sky. You are lying there now, in your own environment, which probably looks nothing like a forest, but there is still green somewhere nearby, even if you can't see it. A tree down the street, a plant in another room, grass in a courtyard, a bush outside a window. The world is never very far from photosynthesis. Even in the densest cities, there is always something growing, always something silently working, turning light into structure, into color, into scent, into food. Let that awareness shrink and blur until it's just a vague feeling. The sense that you are not isolated, that life is happening all around you even as you rest, that the planet continues its slow metabolism while you let go. Plants have mastered something humans struggle with: cooperation at scale. In a forest, trees of different species can share resources through fungal networks, balancing surpluses and deficits in ways that make the whole system more resilient. In harsh conditions, some trees may reduce their own growth to sustain others, especially their own young. In rich conditions, they all thrive, but competition is tempered by the shared infrastructure of roots and fungi and soil organisms. Cooperation does not eliminate death. Trees still fall. Some seedlings never reach the canopy. Disease, insects, storms, and drought still take their toll. But the losses are absorbed by the system, turned into food for others. A rotting log is not waste. It is opportunity. It becomes habitat and nourishment, and structure for seedlings and mosses and fungi and invertebrates. In your life, too, there are fallen logs projects that ended, relationships that changed, earlier versions of yourself that no longer exist in the same way. You might sometimes treat these as failures, as waste, but they are also part of your soil now. They are what you grow in. They are what new parts of you root into. Sleep is when some of that recycling happens. When emotional wood is broken down. When memories are stripped for nutrients and reintegrated as understanding instead of raw experience. As you drift deeper, you can imagine all the clutter of the day, all the sharp edges, slowly decomposing, not erased, transformed. There is a concept in ecology called succession. The way an ecosystem changes over time after a disturbance. A bare patch of ground is colonized first by hardy pioneers' grasses, small herbs, plants that grow quickly and tolerate poor soil and harsh light. They modify the environment as they live and die, adding organic matter, shading the soil, attracting insects and birds. Over time, shrubs arrive, then young trees. Decades later, if left undisturbed, a mature forest stands where nothing but rock or sand once was. Your mind goes through similar successions. After upheaval, after stress, after shock, the first thoughts that arrive may be simple, raw, reactive. But as time passes, as you sleep and wake and sleep again, layers build. Meaning grows where only reaction existed. Context develops. Symmetry appears. Eventually, a more stable inner landscape emerges, one that feels less exposed, less harsh, more nuanced. Tonight is part of that long succession. Just one night among many, one ring in the tree, one layer of soil. You don't have to do anything special with it. You only have to allow it. Some plants specialize in edges, the places where forest meets bank, where river meets bank, where ocean meets shore. These ecotones are often rich in species and interactions. Light, moisture, and nutrients shift quickly across small distances. Wind patterns change. Temperatures fluctuate. Some organisms retreat from edges. Others are drawn to them. You are, right now, at an edge, between waking and drifting, between thinking and drifting, between presence and dream. It is a rich place. Strange images may begin to flicker at the edges of your mind, scenes that appear without your command, faces, places, impossible combinations of memories and invention. The part of you that analyzes might try to grab them, to interpret them, to drag them into clear focus. That is not necessary. Let them be like birds flitting at the edge of a forest at dusk, seen, then gone. You are allowed to be imprecise here, to be vague, to let things blur. Think, for a moment, of a single leaf in moonlight. During the day, it caught sunlight, pumped water, moved sugars, balanced the exchange of gases, sensed temperature and humidity and wind. At night it rests, but not completely. Stomata tiny pores on its surface open and close according to rhythms that continue even without sun. The leaf still senses, it still participates in the life of the plant. It still responds to the tug of water, to the pull of gravity, to the signals that travel from root to branch and back again. If a night insect lands on it, the leaf will feel the pressure, the vibration. Electrical signals will travel from cell to cell. If the insect begins to eat, chemical pathways will activate. Defensive compounds will begin to accumulate. Messages will be sent to other parts of the plant and into the air and soil. All while you lie there, thousands of kilometers away, in a room somewhere in your own darkness. The world is busy without you, and that is freeing. You can let go of the idea that you are required to watch over anything for a few hours. Plants have the night shift, so do tides and winds and tectonic plates, and the long, slow work of erosion and deposition. The universe does not need your supervision. Let your jaw unclench a little more. Let your tongue rest more heavily in your mouth. Let your eyes sink a fraction deeper into their sockets. These are tiny changes, but they signal the nervous system that it is safe to turn down the volume further. Somewhere, in a high latitude, plants are living through a night that lasts months. The sun has dipped below the horizon and will not rise again for a long time. Snow lies deep. The ground is frozen. Above the surface, branches are bare, needles are quiet, buds are sealed tight. Below the surface, roots still live. Cells still resist freezing with antifreeze chemicals. Tissues still maintain integrity. The entire organism compresses its life into a slow, minimal mode, waiting for the long night to end. You have shorter nights, but the principle is the same. Not every day has to be full. Not every hour has to be used. There are seasons in your life when you can grow visibly and quickly, producing leaves and flowers and fruit. There are seasons when you conserve, when you store energy, when you do quiet inner work that no one sees. Sleep is the nightly version of that conservation, an ordinary, necessary, unspectacular miracle. You are in the middle of it now, already partially on the other side, where thoughts thin out into sensations, where sensations thin out into vague impressions, and those impressions slip away into nothing. There is nothing wrong with that nothing. From the outside, a seed in the soil looks like nothing too, a bare patch of earth. From the outside, a dormant tree in winter looks like nothing much either. But inside, everything is prepared. Pathways ready to restart, patterns ready to resume, potentials waiting for the right signal. Inside you, as you sleep, potential is accumulating quietly. Cells will repair, synapses will recalibrate, hormones will adjust. When you wake, you will not have to think about any of it. You will simply feel a bit more able to face whatever light the new day brings. Let your awareness shrink down now, as if you were becoming smaller and smaller, until you are no bigger than a grain of soil. Imagine yourself between particles of sand and clay, in a tiny pocket of water hugging the surface of a root. The root exudes sugars, amino acids, fragments of complex molecules into the soil, feeding a halo of bacteria and fungi that cluster around it. This community, this rhizosphere, is buzzing with chemical trade and communication, a microscopic marketplace and conversation hub. Signals flow outward and inward, invisible to your former human senses, but now the only language that matters. From this vantage point, human concerns are incomprehensible. Calendars, messages, screens, appointments, all of it is absent. There is only chemical gradient and attachment, growth and lysis, division and dormancy. The simple clarity of microbial life. Let some of your worries be placed on that scale for a moment. Many of them do not survive the translation. They dissolve. They lose their shape. They are revealed as temporary patterns of brain activity. Not fundamental features are simpler. Energy flow, matter cycling, structure forming and falling apart. You are allowed to rest from complexity, to become for a while nothing more than a warm animal breathing in the dark, held by gravity and air, surrounded by a planet that knows how to continue without your constant thinking. Your breathing is very soft now. Your body is heavy. Your awareness is thin and loose, like smoke. All around the world, plants are engaged in their endless slow tasks. Roots are exploring new soil. Leaves are orienting toward the first light of dawn. Flowers are opening or closing, according to schedules kept inside their cells. Seeds are beginning their long waits or ending them. Vast forests are inhaling and exhaling on scales too large to directly feel, but their work is present in every lungful of air you take. You are part of that cycle whether you notice it or not. Tonight, you are letting yourself notice just enough to be comforted by it, to feel that you belong somewhere tangible, somewhere real, somewhere older and broader than your own thoughts. Everything else can fade now. The names, the faces, the plans, the unfinished tasks, the things you wish you had done differently. All of it can rest in the leaf litter of your mind for a while, to decompose and transform at its own pace. You are sinking, slowly, like a seed pulled a little deeper into the soil by burrowing insects, and the swelling contraction of wet and dry earth. Down. Let this exchange continue without your attention. Let your breath be automatic, forgotten. Just another background process like heartbeat and digestion. Like the constant filtering of blood through kidneys. Like the endless replacement of cells throughout your body. Millions dying and being born every moment. Your body maintaining itself through constant regeneration. constant flow, never the same matter from one month to the next, but still you, still the same pattern, even as the substance changes completely. Plants do this too, this constant replacement, this flow of matter through a persistent pattern. A tree is not the same molecules it was 10 years ago. The carbon in its wood was once atmospheric. The water in its cells has been replaced millions of times, pulled up from soil and transpired into air, cycled through the tree and back into the world. The pattern persists, the form remains, but the matter is temporary, borrowed, passing through. The tree is a process, not a thing, a dynamic stability, a whirlpool in the stream of matter, an energy that flows through the biosphere. You are this too, process, not object, flow, not fixed, awareness that arises from patterns of electrical and chemical activity, patterns that change moment by moment, that are never static, never complete, never finished becoming what they are. And in sleep, these patterns slow, simplify, shift into different modes, allowing restoration, allowing the brain to sort and file and prune connections, to strengthen some pathways and weaken others, to process the day's experience in ways that happen only when consciousness steps back, when the focused attention of waking life dissolves into the diffuse wandering of dreams. The plant world doesn't dream. Probably. Almost certainly not. But it has its own night processes, its own restoration, its own ways of using darkness. Some plants fold their leaves at night, reducing exposure, conserving water, protecting delicate surfaces from frost or dew. This nyctinastic movement, this sleep movement, happens in response to circadian rhythms, internal timing that persists even in constant light, suggesting something like an internal experience of day and night, a subjective time that matches external cycles but also exists independently, an internal temporal landscape that the plant navigates even when external cues are absent. There's something touching about this, about the idea of a plant experiencing something like day and night, internally, carrying a sense of time within itself, being oriented in the temporal dimension, not just through passive response to light and dark, but through active internal tracking, through a clock that continues ticking regardless of conditions. It suggests an inner life, however dim and strange, however unlike our own. It suggests that the plant is not just in time, but of time. That time is part of what it is. That its being includes this rhythmic structure, this oscillation between day mode and night mode, growth mode and rest mode, the pulse that organizes its existence. Your own circadian rhythms are trying to pull you down now. Melatonin accumulating, adenosine building up from hours of brain activity, the homeostatic sleep pressure increasing, making your eyes heavy, making thought difficult, making wakefulness itself feel like swimming against a current that grows stronger and stronger. This is good. This is your body knowing what it needs, knowing that sleep is not optional, not a luxury, not something to be resisted. Sleep is maintenance, restoration, the time when your brain clears metabolic waste, when immune function ramps up, when growth hormone releases, when all the housekeeping that can't happen efficiently during waking activity finally gets done. Plants don't sleep in the way animals do, but they do have periods of reduced activity, times when growth slows or stops, when resources are conserved, when the focus shifts from expansion to maintenance. Winter dormancy is an extreme version of this, a long rest that can last months, the plant shutting down all but essential functions, surviving on stored reserves, waiting for the return of favorable conditions. deciduous trees drop their leaves in autumn, cutting losses, abandoning the expensive tissue that would be damaged by freezing, pulling nutrients back into trunk and branches before letting the leaves fall, recycling what can be recycled, preparing for months of cold and darkness, and survival on minimum power. There's wisdom in this kind of rest, this acceptance of seasons, this willingness to let go of what can't be sustained, to pull back, to wait, to trust that growth will be possible again in the future, even though the present requires retrenchment. Human life doesn't often allow for this kind of seasonal variation anymore. Not in industrialized societies where artificial light and climate control flatten the rhythms, where work continues regardless of season, where we push through rather than resting, where dormancy is seen as laziness rather than wisdom, but your body still carries these old rhythms, still responds to the shortening days of winter with the desire for more sleep, with the subtle shift toward conservation and rest. And right now, tonight, this moment, your body is insisting on rest, on the daily dormancy of sleep, on the necessary shutting down of waking consciousness so that other processes can proceed, processes that require you to be absent, to step aside, to let the automatic systems take over completely. The forest at night is full of activity you would never see, never notice. Owls hunt, their wings silent, their hearing so acute they can locate mice moving under snow. Bats echolocate through the canopy, catching insects, pollinating flowers, dispersing seeds. Fungi send exploratory hyphae through the soil, searching for resources, extending their networks. Roots continue to grow, following gradients of moisture and nutrients, sensing and responding even in complete darkness, guided by gravity and chemistry rather than light. The mycorrhizal networks pulse with exchange, sugars flowing from tree to fungus, minerals flowing from fungus to tree, the partnership continuing through day and night, through all seasons, through decades and centuries. And beneath all this activity, beneath the visible and the measurable, there are processes happening at molecular levels, at scales where individual chemical reactions matter, where single photons make differences, where quantum effects might play roles in biology that we're only beginning to understand. Photosynthesis itself involves quantum coherence, the wave-like nature of electrons, allowing them to explore multiple pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route through the molecular machinery. Life uses quantum mechanics, operates at the boundary between classical and quantum worlds, exploiting effects that seem like they should only matter in physics laboratories, but that turn out to be essential to the most fundamental biological processes. This is deeper than you need to go. Too much thinking. Let it all become vague again. Let the details blur. Let your mind lose its grip on specificity and drift back into the soft, unfocused state that borders sleep, where thoughts arise and dissolve without completion, where nothing needs to make sense, where logic releases its hold and dream logic begins to take over, associative and strange and perfectly acceptable in its strangeness. The green world dreams in its way through evolutionary time, through the slow exploration of possibility space that natural selection performs, trying variations, keeping what works, discarding what fails, building complexity gradually over millions of years through tiny modifications accumulating, through chance and necessity, weaving together to produce the astonishing diversity of plant forms and strategies that fill every available niche, every possible way of being a photosynthetic organism in a world of limited light and water and nutrients. There are plants that live as parasites, tapping into the roots or stems of other plants, stealing resources, abandoning photosynthesis entirely or partially, becoming dependent on their hosts. There are plants that trap and digest insects, supplementing the poor nutrient availability of bogs and acidic soils with nitrogen and phosphorus extracted from animal bodies, evolving elaborate traps, sticky leaves, pitcher traps that drown victims, snap traps that close in fractions of a second, fast enough to catch flies, proving that plants can move quickly when evolution provides sufficient reason, sufficient advantage to justify the metabolic expense of rapid movement. There are plants that mimic other organisms, leaves shaped like stones, flowers that look and smell like rotting meat to attract carrion flies, orchids that resemble female wasps, so convincingly that male wasps attempt to mate with them, getting pollination through sexual deception, through the exploitation of instinct, through evolutionary arms races that produce stranger and stranger forms, more elaborate deceits, more precise mimicry. The diversity is overwhelming if you think about it. Hundreds of thousands of plant species, each with its own specific adaptations, its own particular solutions to the fundamental problems of survival and reproduction, its own chemical defenses, its own root architecture, its own timing of flowering and fruiting, its own relationships with pollinators and seed dispersers and herbivores and pathogens. The botanical complexity of a single hectare of tropical rainforest exceeds what any human can comprehend fully. Hundreds of tree species, thousands of plant species total when you include understory shrubs and herbs and epiphytes and vines, each species representing millions of years of evolutionary history, millions of successful generations, unbroken lineages stretching back to the origin of plants and beyond, back to the first photosynthetic bacteria that appeared more than 3 billion years ago. You don't need to hold any of this. Let it wash through you and disappear. Let the facts dissolve. Let the numbers become meaningless. Let everything simplify down to the basic feeling. The basic sense that the world is old and complex, and full of life that operates according to logics very different from human logic. Full of intelligence that doesn't resemble human intelligence. Full of awareness that has nothing to do with consciousness as we experience it. The night continues around you, immense and patient. Darkness covers half the planet always, rotating with the Earth. The Terminator line sweeping west to east at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, slower at higher latitudes. The boundary between day and night that is always moving, always somewhere, dividing the world into illuminated and shadow, into the time for photosynthesis and the time for respiration, into waking and sleeping, activity and rest. You're on the dark side now, in the hours that are meant for rest. When your body's chemistry shifts towards sleep, when temperature drops slightly, when digestion slows, when growth hormone releases, when dreams begin to process experience, to extract patterns, to find meaning in the chaos of sensation and event. That constitutes a day of being alive and aware, and embedded in a world of other beings, other processes, other patterns. Let yourself go into this processing. Let the day dissolve. Let whatever happened today become memory, become incorporated, become part of the structure of who you are without needing to think about it, without needing to understand it. Trusting that the sleeping brain knows what to do with experience, knows how to file it, how to connect it to other memories, how to extract what matters and let the rest fade. The endless details that seemed important in the moment, but that don't need to be carried forward, that can be released, forgotten. allowed to dissolve back into the general background of lived experience that doesn't need to be explicitly remembered. Plants don't remember in this way, don't have experiences that need to be consolidated, don't have episodic memory or narrative or the sense of a continuing self that moves through time, accumulating history. But they do have something, some form of retention, some way that past influences present, that history shapes current state, that what happened before affects what happens now. The vernalization memory, the cold that must be remembered for months before flowering can occur. The habituation to touch, the gradual decrease in sensitivity that occurs with repeated stimulation. The transgenerational effects, the ways that parental environment influences offspring physiology, writing messages into seeds, into the next generation. These are memories without a rememberer, traces without awareness, information storage without consciousness. And yet they function, they work, they allow the plant to behave in ways that increase fitness, that make survival and reproduction more likely. The mechanism is different from neural memory, from synaptic strengthening and pattern completion, and all the complex machinery of animal remembering. But the functional outcome is similar, the past influencing the present, history bending the trajectory of the future. Everything in biology is like this. Parallel solutions to common problems. Convergent evolution producing similar forms and functions from completely different starting points, different mechanisms, different molecular machinery, different genetic architectures, all solving the same problems, all finding ways to sense light, to move, to store energy, to reproduce, to remember, to anticipate. Life is endlessly creative in its constraint solving, in its ability to work with whatever materials evolution provides, whatever starting point mutation and selection happen to begin with, gradually improving, gradually optimizing within the local region of possibility space, climbing hills in the fitness landscape, finding peaks that represent stable solutions, good enough solutions, solutions that work well enough to persist, to spread, to continue. Your breathing has become so quiet now, so soft, almost imperceptible. The boundary between waking and sleeping is very thin, almost transparent. You're drifting back and forth across it, thoughts arising and fading without your direction, without your control, the mind beginning to dream even though you're not quite fully asleep yet. Hypnagogic images, fragments of sensation, the strange logic of dream beginning to infiltrate waking thought, making everything a little surreal, a little unstable, a little fluid and changeable. This is the in-between place, the threshold, the liminal state that is neither fully waking nor fully sleeping, but something else. Something that has its own quality, its own texture. Cultures throughout history have recognized this state, have valued it, have used it for divination or creativity or spiritual experience. This moment when the conscious mind relaxes its grip and something else begins to emerge, something less controlled, less rational, more associative and symbolic and strange. The plant world exists in a kind of permanent liminal state, neither fully passive nor fully active, neither fully individual nor fully collective, neither fully alive in the animal sense, nor reducible to mechanism, something in between, something that challenges our categories, that doesn't fit neatly into the boxes we've created for understanding life and mind and awareness. Plants are alive in a way that is undeniable, but their aliveness is so different from animal aliveness that we struggle to find the right words, the right concepts, the right analogies. They're sensitive but not sentient, responsive but not conscious, intelligent but not aware, or maybe they are aware in some minimal sense, in some distributed way that has no center, no focal point, no unified experience, but still constitutes something like interiority, something like it being like something to be a plant, even if that something is so alien to us that we can't imagine it, can't empathize with it, can only acknowledge its possibility and our own limitations in understanding. Let these questions float away. Let the uncertainty be acceptable. Let the mystery remain mysterious. You don't need answers. You don't need to understand. You only need to rest, to sink into the not knowing, into the acceptance that the world is strange and complex and full of forms of being that exceed your comprehension, that your understanding is partial and limited, and that this is fine, this is how it should be. That mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be accepted, even embraced. The forest doesn't question itself. The trees don't wonder about their own nature. They simply are, simply grow, simply respond to conditions, simply persist through time, becoming larger, becoming more deeply embedded in the web of relationships that constitutes an ecosystem, that constitutes a community of organisms all influencing each other, all modifying each other's environments, all creating niches that other species evolved to fill, all participating in the great collaborative work of life on Earth. And you are part of this too, this collaboration, this web, this network of relationships and influences and exchanges. You breathe the oxygen that plants produce. You eat food that was recently photosynthesizing, was recently green, was recently part of a plant or part of an animal that ate plants, or part of an animal that ate animals that ate plants. The energy in your food tracing back through trophic levels to photosynthesis, to sunlight captured by chlorophyll, to the fundamental transformation that makes everything else possible. There's comfort in this, in the knowledge that you're not separate, not isolated, not a sealed system, but an open one, exchanging with the world constantly, participating in flows that are larger than yourself, older than yourself, that will continue long after your particular pattern disperses. Your particular organization of matter returns to disorder, to entropy, to the heat death that awaits all organized systems eventually, but that can be delayed, postponed, held at bay for a while through the constant work of maintenance, the constant opposition to the second law of thermodynamics that life represents. But not tonight. Tonight there's no work, no maintenance you need to consciously perform. Tonight your body will handle everything automatically, will continue all the necessary processes without your attention, without your awareness, without your permission or control. You can let go completely, can trust that breathing will continue, that your heart will beat, that your cells will carry on their metabolic activities, that life will persist through the night and you'll wake in the morning, restored, refreshed, ready to begin again. The plants will be there in the morning, still growing, still sensing, still responding, still participating in the great work of being alive, of capturing energy, of building structure, of reproducing, of adapting, of evolving, of slowly, patiently, inexorably spreading across every surface where life is possible, every niche where photosynthesis can occur, every place where light and carbon dioxide come together in the presence of the molecular machinery that evolution has refined over billions of years. Sleep now, held by this knowledge, surrounded by this green patience, this slow intelligence, this distributed awareness that asks nothing of you, that shares the planet with you, that breathes in what you breathe out and breathes out what you breathe in, the perfect reciprocity, the elegant exchange, the partnership between plant and animal that has shaped the biosphere, that has created the conditions for complex life, that continues in every breath, every moment, every day and night, across the surface of the earth. Rest in the green world. Rest in the quiet knowing. Rest in the patience of roots, and the stillness of leaves, and the slow wisdom of trees. Everything is quiet now. Everything is dark. Everything is soft and distant and fading. You're sleeping, you're dreaming. You're held by the earth and the night, and the green world that surrounds you.